Nobody heard the scream, but everyone heard the whisper. In that silent dawn, inside the most heavily guarded mansion in the city, the millionaire's mother suddenly opened her eyes, and began murmuring a name no one recognized. The cameras didn't fail, the alarms didn't sound, yet something had entered that room. And from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same again. Companies, people, destinies. A billionaire in the pharmaceutical industry, he had built an empire on precision, cold contracts, and ruthless decisions. But there was one thing he couldn't control, the condition of his mother, Mrs. Eleanor. She was confined to the mansion itself. Doctors came and went, diagnoses shifted, tests offered no explanation. Eleanor was deteriorating, little by little. Then, on an ordinary morning, Alexander noticed something odd. Someone was entering her room, without authorization. Alexander Villars didn't believe in coincidences. To him, everything had a cause, logic, and control. And Rose didn't fit into any of those categories. After the third consecutive night in which his mother slept peacefully only after the presence of that quiet cleaning woman, Alexander decided to act. He ordered the head of security to investigate every detail of Rose's life, address, history, old records, anything that could explain her strange influence over Mrs. Eleanor. The report came back too clean. No registered family, no formal employment before the mansion, no old photographs. It was as if Rose had appeared out of nowhere. That disturbed him deeply. The next morning, Alexander decided to observe in person. He hid in the dark hallway leading to his mother's room, out of camera range. The silence there was heavy, almost suffocating. The old clock ticked each second like a warning. Rose entered slowly. She didn't turn on the light. She didn't call the nurses. She simply approached the bed, sat beside Eleanor, and gently took her hand. The touch wasn't professional. It was intimate, familiar. "They lied to you," Rose whispered, her voice steady yet full of pain. "But I didn't." Eleanor's eyes opened slowly. A sob escaped her lips. A tear rolled down her time-worn face. Alexander felt his stomach twist. Eleanor gripped Rose's hand with surprising strength for someone so frail. Her lips trembled, trying to form words that wouldn't come. Rose simply stayed there, silent, like someone who had been waiting for decades. When Rose left the room, Alexander quickly stepped back. His heart was pounding. Something inside him had been touched. Something he thought was long dead. That night, Alexander couldn't sleep. He dreamed of a small house with peeling walls and the strong smell of coffee. He dreamed of a woman singing softly while rocking him. A woman who didn't have Eleanor's face. He dreamed of crying, of a door closing, of a hand being torn from his own. He woke up in a cold sweat. The next morning, he decided Rose had to go. That woman was stirring up too much. The past, his mother's health, his own sanity. He prepared the paperwork, authorized the dismissal, but before he could carry it out, something unexpected happened. Mrs. Eleanor woke up lucid for the first time in months. No confusion, no delusions, no whispers. When she saw Alexander, her eyes filled with tears. "Son," she said, her voice weak but clear. "We need to talk, before it's too late." And in that instant, Alexander knew. The past he had tried to bury, had awakened. The room was too quiet. The machines kept running, blinking green and blue lights, but something had changed. Mrs. Eleanor was awake. Her eyes, once always distant, now looked at Alexander with an almost cruel clarity. He approached slowly, as if any sudden movement might shatter the rare moment. "Mother," he called, his voice restrained. She took a deep breath before answering, as though each word required courage. "Do you remember the woman who took care of you when you were little?" she asked. The question hit Alexander like a blow. He didn't answer. He just stood there, feeling an old weight rise in his chest. Eleanor continued, "The one who sang you to sleep, who protected you when you cried, and who was sent away so I could take her place." The air left him. Alexander felt the floor vanish beneath his feet. For years, that memory had been treated as an irrelevant detail. A childhood blur. Now it was there, too sharp to ignore. Her name was Rose, Eleanor said, her eyes welling up. The silence became deafening. "That's impossible," Alexander murmured. Rose is just the cleaning woman. Eleanor gave a weak laugh, heavy with guilt. Nothing was ever just my son. It never was. She closed her eyes for a moment, as if reliving everything. She told him that when Alexander was still small, Rose had raised him. A simple woman, originally hired as a caregiver, but who became a mother in every way except blood. Alexander had bonded with her in a way Eleanor could never accept. I was afraid, she confessed. Afraid of losing you. Afraid I wasn't enough. That was when she made the decision that would change everything. She used money, influence, lawyers. She erased Rose from Alexander's life. I told you she left of her own accord, she whispered. And you believed me. Alexander felt a knot in his stomach. The childhood he remembered was incomplete. Manipulated. And now, he asked, his voice shaking. Why has she come back now? Eleanor took a long time to answer. Because I'm dying, she said at last. And because the truth can't die with me. Alexander left the room stunned. He walked the mansion's corridors like a stranger in his own home. Every painting on the wall seemed to watch him. Every door hid something he had never wanted to see. Rose. She hadn't been there by chance. That same night, Alexander decided to confront her. He found her in the laundry room, folding sheets with her usual calm. The hum of the machine filled the space, but it didn't drown out the tension. You knew, he said bluntly. From the beginning. Rose didn't turn around right away. She finished folding the sheet, placed it on the pile, and only then faced Alexander. I always knew, she replied. There was no anger in her voice. No fear, only weariness. Why didn't you say anything? He asked. Because some truths can only be told when the person is ready to hear them. Alexander laughed nervously. You destroyed my life in silence, and now you come back as if nothing happened. Rose's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. I never wanted to destroy you. I only wanted to protect who you were, before you became who you are now. The words hurt more than any accusation. Alexander turned and left. He needed answers. He needed control. Then everything began to get worse. The next morning, Mrs. Eleanor suffered a sudden relapse. Irregular heartbeat, unstable blood pressure. The doctors were baffled. The tests showed no infection, no organ failure. It's as if her body is being attacked slowly, one doctor said. But we don't know why. Alexander felt a chill. He began noticing details he had previously ignored. Medications arriving overly sealed. New nurses, hired on outside recommendations. Strange board meetings happening while his mother worsened. One day, passing a meeting room, he overheard muffled voices. When she dies, the agreement will be released, someone said. We just need to buy time. Alexander froze. That night, Rose came to him. They're poisoning your mother, she said directly. In small doses. Undetectable. Alexander exploded. You've lost your mind. Rose took a deep breath. I clean rooms. Trash. Glasses. I hear conversations no one thinks matter. And I know when something is wrong. She explained everything. An old pharmaceutical project. Illegal trials covered up for decades. Eleanor was the only one who could still officially confess. Dead, she becomes silence, Rose concluded. Alive, she's a risk. It clicked. Alexander's empire was rotten from the inside. He gathered evidence, recorded meetings, cancelled contracts, confronted the board in a meeting that ended in threats and lawsuits. He lost billions in hours. But he saved his mother. The doctors changed the protocol. The nurses were removed. The poisoning stopped. Mrs. Eleanor improved slowly. And Rose disappeared from the mansion before the scandal broke. No goodbyes. No explanations. Alexander found her days later in a simple house far from the city. You saved everything, he said. Rose smiled sadly. No, I only returned what should never have been taken. He lowered his head. For the first time, Alexander Villars wasn't a millionaire in control. He was just a man facing the truth. And that hurt more than any illness. The mansion had never felt so empty. Even with staff moving about, doctors coming and going, guards at the gates, Alexander felt something essential had left with Rose. The silence now wasn't just absence of sound, it was absence of meaning. Mrs. Eleanor slept, not a deep coma, but real rest. For the first time in months, her face showed neither pain nor visible guilt. The machines were still there, but the numbers were stable. Human, normal. She had survived. The newspapers didn't know yet. The scandal was being contained, negotiated behind the scenes, as everything in that world usually was. The company board had been quietly dissolved. Some names vanished from the market. Others tried to fight back, but Alexander didn't retreat. He lost contracts. He lost investors. He lost his untouchable status. But something had changed inside him. Sitting beside his mother's bed, Alexander held her frail hand. There was no anger there. Only a deep, ancient weariness. I made wrong choices, Eleanor said without opening her eyes. And I paid for them, too late. Alexander swallowed hard. So did I, he replied. She opened her eyes slowly and looked at him. Not with authority or guilt, but as someone who had finally accepted her own fall. Rose, Eleanor murmured, she was more of a mother to you than I ever was. The confession didn't sound like a plea for forgiveness. It sounded like release. Eleanor turned her face to the window. If you want, go find her. Don't repeat my mistake. Those words echoed in Alexander's mind for days. The mansion returned to routine, but nothing was the same. The corridors felt longer, the walls colder. Money no longer muffled the emptiness. Then he did something he had never done before. He left alone. No driver, no escort, no schedule. He drove for hours, passing through neighborhoods he only knew from the tinted window of his car. Simple houses, uneven streets, real people. He found Rose in a small house surrounded by plants. The gate was ajar. She was sweeping the yard, as if she had never cleaned marble or bulletproof glass. I knew you would come, she said, unsurprised. Alexander stopped a few steps away. You left without saying anything. Rose leaned the broom against the wall. Some goodbyes are just attempts to ease guilt, she replied. And I didn't need that. He took a deep breath. I did. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was honest. I lost everything, Alexander said. Or almost everything. Rose looked at him carefully. No, she said. You lost what was never yours. The words hurt, and freed him. Alexander told her everything. About the company. The reparations fund he created for victims of the old trials. About removing the family name from the main building. About no longer wanting to be remembered as the man who won, but as the one who fixed things. Rose listened without interrupting. Did you do it for me? She asked. No, he answered. I did it because it was the only right thing left. She smiled, a small, weary, but genuine smile. Then you learned. Alexander returned to that house many times. At first in silence, then with questions, later with stories. Rose told him about the years she lived far away, watching from a distance the man Alexander became. About how she almost gave up returning. About how she decided to enter that mansion not to accuse, but to protect. I didn't want to destroy you, she said one day. I wanted to save what was still inside you. And she did. Months later, Mrs. Eleanor passed away. Without pain, without machines, without secrets. At the funeral, Alexander gave no speeches. He refused cameras. He didn't use his famous last name. He stood beside Rose, not as an heir, but as a son. Time passed. The company changed. Smaller, more transparent, less powerful, more human. Alexander changed too. He began visiting schools, hospitals, social projects that once existed only in cold reports. He learned to listen, to make mistakes without buying silence. And every week, without exception, he went to the simple house where everything had truly begun. There was no luxury there. But there was truth, and that was enough. Before dying, Mrs. Eleanor left a letter. Just one sentence. Some people save lives with medicine. Others, with courage. Alexander kept that letter as he had never kept contracts. Because in the end, he understood. Not every hero wears a suit. Not every miracle comes from money. And not every mistake needs to be inherited. Sometimes, the one who saves everything is the one the world insisted on overlooking.